Thursday. That means it's opening ceremonies at Norwescon 47. My name is Rob Stewart. I am the chair of Norwescon. I'd like to all welcome you to the show. This is Shauna, my vice chair. The lights sparkle a lot here. Just want to bring up a couple things. I want to thank you all. Norwescon, a little bit about Norwescon. Norwescon is an all-volunteer convention. We wouldn't be here without the great staff and the volunteers that put this on. If there's any volunteers and staff members in the audience, could you guys please stand up? For the last year, these guys have been putting a lot of effort in making sure this goes well, and we want to thank you and thank them. So also during the week, if you feel like you want to volunteer and hang out with us, we'll love to take you up on it. Another thing I would like to talk about tomorrow in the art show, you can take a look at some art auction items for our charity, Page Ahead. Page Ahead is a local charity here that works in giving books to low-income families and making sure books out in the book desert, kids get access to reading material, which is, we're all readers, so that means a big, to most of us here in this room. All right.
I know you all have been in the lobby. Have you all seen the t-shirts this year? Yeah. What do you think? Check them out. She also has limited edition pins and patches for this year. So awesome. And hot sauce, but that's not Norwescon.
It doesn't matter. You can still have hot sauce.
It's still hot sauce, yes. Yeah. Has anybody got guidebook on their phone? Awesome. That's what we like to see. If anybody doesn't, and you want to have our program in your hand at all times, we are on guidebook. And I will hand it back to Rob.
Okay, I've been also asked to make a statement from our zine editor. There is a lot going on in Norwescon 47, and we have several ways you can stay connected and informed so you don't miss out on what's important to you. Have you guys seen the zine yet? All right. One resource is our website where you can find out the things Norwescon related. The web address, of course, is norwescon.org, O-R-G. You can go mobile with the guidebook app and keep your schedule updated. You can even set it to alert you when your chosen programming is starting. Then there's our daily zine called Nebula Notes this year. The zine is not only amusing and fun, but it's interactive. We welcome your photos, interesting interactions at the con, and the funny, geeky things you overhear. It's easy to connect with the zine at zine@norwescon.org. So you can all add in. Well, that's enough for me and Shauna, so we're going to get off the stage. But I would like to introduce our wonderful MC and our GOHs. Our MC is Lydia K. Valentine, Tacoma laureate. So I'll hand the mic over to her so she can get to something. But one more thing. I know those people won't care about this, but go Browns.
Oh, that's dirty. That's just dirty. So I'm a Steelers fan, ride or die for life. Black and gold. All right. Hi, everybody. I look forward to the con every single year, and I'm super excited to be back again as the MC. And I always start out, it is a regular part of my practice to acknowledge the land. I have a land acknowledgement, and a land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes indigenous peoples as the traditional stewards of the land, and the enduring relationship that exists between indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with indigenous communities, but it serves as a first step in honoring the land we occupy and as an act of resistance against the erasure of their histories. I acknowledge on behalf of myself only that the land where I live is the unceded traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Puyallup Nation, to whom I express my gratitude and respect. I also acknowledge that this country would not exist as is if not for the free labor of stolen, enslaved African people and their Black descendants. I honor the legacy of the Black diaspora and call recognition toward the Black lives, knowledge, skills, and future stolen due to violence and white supremacy. There are people who find land and life acknowledgements divisive, but it is only through the collective remembrance of and education about our long ignored, divisive, and destructive history that we are able to move forward together and avoid repetition of heinous genocidal behavior. Thank you. It often comes up in communities that don't have anything to do with some of the things I've talked about. Oh, why do we have to get political? But human rights, I don't think, is a political matter. It is a life matter. So, on that happy note, I would love to introduce our Norwescon 47 guests of honor. I have a cheat sheet. Everyone should always have notes. Sorry, I'm a teacher too. Catherynne Valente is the New York Times bestselling author of over 40 books of science fiction, fantasy, and horror, including Deathless, space opera, The Past is Red, and the Fairyland novels. She is the winner of the Hugo, Locust, Nebula, Sturgeon, and Lambda Awards, among others, and has been shortlisted for the World Fantasy and Ursula K. Le Guin Awards. She lives on a small island off the coast of Maine, though she is from here, with her child and several troublingly large cats. Let's welcome our writer guest of honor, Cat Valente. All right. Wayne Barlowe is a science fiction and fantasy author and artist who has created images for books, film, video games, and galleries, and written and illustrated a number of art books, including Expedition, Barlowe's Guide to Extraterrestrials, Barlowe's Guide to Fantasy, Barlowe's Inferno, Brushfire, The Alien Life of Wayne Barlowe, and An Alphabet of Dinosaurs. Expedition aired as the Discovery Channel special Alien Planet. A board game based on Expedition will be released in 2025. His video game concept work includes Dante's Inferno, Shadow of Mordor, and Shadow of War. His film designs can be seen in Blade 2, Galaxy Quest, Hellboy 1 and 2, Harry Potter 3 and 4, Avatar, and Pacific Rim. He has written 2 novels, God's Demon and its sequel, The Heart of Hell, and is at work on the 3rd and final novel, Lucifer's Soul. His art book, Psychopomp, accumulating 30 years of his hell paintings and drawings, was published in 2021. Psychopomp 2 is in the works, as is The Wildfire of Hell. Let's welcome our artist guest of honor, Wayne Barlowe. Our next guest of honor, Tracy Drain, is a systems engineer with a career steeped in deep space exploration. She received a bachelor's degree from the University of Kentucky in 1998 and a master's degree from the Georgia Institute of Technology in 2000, both in mechanical engineering. As an undergrad at U of K, she interned at NASA's Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. After graduating from Georgia Tech in 2000, she officially joined the NASA family as a full-time employee at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. In her 20-plus years at the JPL, Tracy has been involved in the development, testing, and/or operation of 5 missions: Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, a science and relay orbiter at Mars; Kepler, a space-based exoplanet hunter; Juno, Jupiter orbiter; Psyche, currently on its way to study an asteroid; and now Europa Clipper, a mission to one of the icy moons of Jupiter, slated to launch in October 2024. So, I don't know if the year's wrong, but there's that. All right, let's please welcome our science guest of honor, Tracy Drain. right. Our next two guests work at Paizo, and they are, Paizo is our Spotlight publishing company, Spotlight publisher, and they are Jenny sorry, I had it right earlier, I didn't even make a mistake. Jenny Jarzabski and Mike Kimmel, and I will read their bios separately. Jenny Jarzabski is a creative manager of Starfinder at Paizo Publishing. Jenny's works in tabletop gaming include dozens of published credits, ranging from rulebooks to epic adventure campaigns. After a successful open playtest in 2024, Jenny and the Starfinder team are excited to launch the second edition this year and have many exciting announcements coming up. Jenny's passionate about collaborative science fantasy world building, tabletop RPGs as an industry and hobby, and big stumpy robots, also known as mechs. Jenny believes playing games can help everyone to sparkle and shine their brightest. Please welcome Jenny Jarzabski. Mike Kimmel. As a developer at Paizo, Mike Kimmel is one of the creators of the upcoming Starfinder 2nd Edition role-playing game. Mike has over 15 years of freelance writing experience in the tabletop games industry and 7 years of experience running a community for aspiring freelancers. He spent nearly a decade as a teacher and literacy specialist before transitioning to a full-time career in game writing. Mike passionately believes in fostering diverse, welcoming communities of gamers and game creators. That's how meaningful, lasting stories and friendships are made. Mike lives in the Pacific Northwest with his spouse, 2 children, 2 dogs named after authors, and a cat named after a Star Trek character. Please welcome Mike Kimmel. All right, finally, last but not least, our special guest of honor, Isis Asare. Isis Asare is a queer Afrofuturist and lover of all things Black culture. A citizen of the world, Isis was born to Ghanaian immigrants in Harlem, New York, and resides concurrently in Seattle, Washington, and Oakland, California. Isis is an alum of Stanford University, Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government, and Columbia Business School, where they earned a bachelor's degree in psychology, master's in public policy, and MBA. Respectfully, Isis is the CEO, founder of Sista Sci-Fi, the first Black-owned bookstore focused on science fiction and fantasy in the United States, as validated by the American Booksellers Association. Please welcome Isis Asare. Yes, everybody is awesome having you here. So, I'm going to dive right in. So some of you have had some panels already. How has the con been going for you, and has there been anything that you were surprised about in your panels? And we have, just so you all know, we have 3 mics, so we'll have to share. Or 4, I guess. Yes. Does anybody want to start? Anybody who had a panel today? I think, Kat, did you have a couple? Okay.
I've had 2. Yeah, no, they're actually both really smooth and great and quite well attended, which honestly, the Thursday panels on a con that starts on a Thursday before opening ceremonies, that's a bit of a dead zone. And I don't blame anybody for that. It's a work day. But it was very well attended and quite lively panels.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, and I've had one, and it was really nice to have the audience interaction. I loved how our moderator asked questions and then threw it to the audience. We had a little back and forth, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, anybody?
I was in one today too, actually with Mike. We were in a Creating a Monster panel. We have 2 more coming this weekend at 3 p.m. if anyone wants to come. We're basically doing a game design jam. So today we made the monster, and we made something, it was called like, what did we call it? Like a Cthulhu, oh gosh, I can't remember. It was like a weird like Cthulhu rat basically that lived under the sea. It's a whole thing, and it has deep lore now. But we got to make a monster with the people in the panel, like the audience, and it was really fun. And yeah, I was just surprised at how enthusiastic people were on a Thursday for sure.
The best thing about that panel was that it was a very young, I'll say kid, who like pitched the idea for this creature. So it was like a design jam. We all were riffing off each other, and be forewarned, if you're running any other monster design panel for the rest of the convention, we've instructed the audience to like infiltrate your panel and spread the word of the Cthulhu rat thing, Kurathi, the Kurathi. So if you hear about a weird Cthulhu rat, like, don't blame us, blame this young person whose name we didn't catch. Please come find me and tell me who you are so we can give you credit for the rat thing.
That's awesome.
So my first panel will be after this panel, Women World Builders, and so I am excited and very anxious at the same time.
It's been a long time for me, but I was on a concept art panel, really stimulating. We revealed a lot of secret stories about Hollywood and working with directors, and if you weren't there, you missed out.
We don't get a sneak
I'm
peek?
afraid not.
Oh, okay. All right. So like you all, I have a very long and involved bio. And I always think about the things that I didn't put in there, that I'm like, oh, but really I'm just kind of a nerd. What are some things that you would, if you weren't who you are, like kind of the more personal or more funny or ridiculous elements that you might add to your bio? Something interesting.
Questions like that always make my brain go, I don't know anything about myself. I suddenly have forgotten even my own name. So I live on this weird little island off the coast of Maine, and it's very small. There are 800 people living there, and it's when you live in a small community that you have to take a boat to get to. That is actually a huge part of your life. Like the village thing, it's kind of not consensual. When you're there, like you kind of just have to because you actually live in a village. And so like in all of my professional biographies and everything, I talk about the books that I wrote and my cats and my child, who's here with me. The first convention they are old enough to participate in. But like half my life is just this weird community that I am a part of. And like, you can't choose your family, you really can't choose your islanders. And some of them turn out to be the most amazing people. Actually, the original illustrator for Wicked lives on the same island that I do. Like there are some amazing people who live on this island, and then there are some like weird old hermits. And that takes up, like I wish that I could just tell stories about Peaks Island sometime, but nobody cares. Like it's such an odd and interesting place with an extraordinary history. So like, yeah, the goofy stories about the island, like we have these geese that well, probably their parents belonged to somebody at some point, but like those people moved away. There used to be 9 of them. I called them Goosapalooza because they would they're very aggressive, and they go down the street like abreast, just marching down, owning the place. Like your traffic report in the morning is like the goose report. So like things like that, which don't matter and aren't in a professional biography, but like my day-to-day life is involved in being highly involved in a very real village. Like it's like a medieval village, but without, with like sanitation and stuff like that.
Yeah, very thankful for that.
Are we going in order here?
No, please do not feel like you need to go in order. We can just do popcorn.
I mean, I don't have much in terms of goofy. I'm way too serious a guy for that. But I've been a cat person my whole life. Okay, I've had a succession of cats in my life and loved them all and respected them and hopefully got the respect back. And it was great. And so I work at home alone. My wife goes into New York and works 5 days a week, 4 days a week. And she got this notion that we should have a dog. And I was a little bit resistant, being the inveterate cat person that I am. You know, they're dignified. They have their own space. They're wonderful. I love cats. And then we got this puppy. And we named it, because it's a Maltipoo. We named it Lilu Dallas Maltipoo, of course. And my life hasn't been the same since. I fell in love with this puppy the second I held it. And for this entire trip, I'm feeling nothing but remorse that we had to board it. You know, so, you know, is that goofy or is it sad, pathetic, whatever?
It's wonderful.
It is what it is. You know, I've been converted now. I'm a cat-dog person. Something I could never have ever predicted, but there it is.
Yeah, thank you.
That is so sweet. I love that. You know, the reason I didn't speak up immediately, my brain was turning. I'm such a goofy person. I was trying to decide which of the 27 goofy things I could tell you about. I think that my bio does say that I like languages, and I've been studying Spanish and I'm learning Korean. I don't think it says the reason I'm learning Korean is that I am so far down the K-drama and the K-pop hole that I cannot get out. My people are out there. I'm going to be back in this city in Seattle in a month because Stray Kids will be here. Yes, Stray Kids. And I'm traveling on the day they're in LA, so I'm flying all the way back just to see them while they're in the States. So that's my goofy thing. And if you want to know what my bracelet said, it's totally related to Stray Kids. I will tell you all about them if you ask.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Same. I'm also a little bit of a goofy person and silly by nature, so there's probably a lot of things I could share, but I'm inspired by the pet stories. I want to talk about my pets. I have cats, but I'm also kind of like an animal collector. Like, I always tend to find like stray animals and I tend to feed them, and eventually they move into my house. Recently, I just found a stray cat that was living until about 6 months ago. She was just living under cars in my apartment complex and like eating out of the dumpster, and now she sits on my couch and I get to pet her. So I helped rehabilitate this feral cat. Like, she has her little feral ear clip and everything. She still sometimes will scratch you if you pet her when she's not ready, but I have learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot about like consent and body language, but I've learned so much more since getting this cat. And I understand how to speak cat now, and I can see like when her posture changes just a little bit, it's like, nope, it's time to be done. I also have befriended my neighborhood crows. I highly recommend feeding crows. If you don't, they really will bring you gifts. And I thought that this would take a long time, but it took about 3 weeks before they brought me first an amber colored marble, like a really big marble, and then they brought me a clear like plastic hair tie, like one of those little, they look like telephone cords kind of, so they're shiny. So they bring me little shiny things and they leave them on my second floor patio, so I know it's not anybody else, it's the crows. Or somebody with a ladder who's like trying to convince me that the crows are love me as well. But anyway, there's my story about the crows.
I just want to talk about my pets now.
I need to know those names.
You do need to know the names, but see, I can draw it out, right? No, I mean, the thing that I think sprang to my mind immediately is kind of a soul-searching thing that I've been doing a lot over the last, I don't know how many years. It's hard to know when you start thinking about this kind of thing. Part of me has always known, but I'm like super autistic. And this is something that I am, I didn't know that as a kid. In fact, like I told my mom recently and it was like, no, you're not, right? Like, that's ridiculous, that's other people, right? And so it's something that I'm exploring and learning about, and like reading the Dark Tower novels and reading about Roland Deschain, if you've ever read those. I don't know. I don't think Stephen King like wrote, oh, this character's autistic, right? But like, to me, I was reading that and I was like, dang. He's straightening the picture in the hotel wall, right? And he's like super robotic and no one understands him, right? And all these things. So like, that's me, and that's the thing that like sprang to my mind that I wanted to like share, that I'm I don't know how to talk about it, but here I am talking about it. So, but my dog is named Vonnegut, my older one. That's one of them that I'll share with you now. We call him Vonnie, or, you know, Dum Dum or whatever.
All right.
I appreciate your share. I write my bio, I give it to folks, and then I get there and then they read it and I'm like, like every part of me cringes. I was like, nobody wants to know all that. So I don't know. I mean, I wish that I included that I became a plant mom for the first time like a year and a half ago, and it's changed my life. Like, I went to visit she's my younger sister. She's really bossy, right? I say this with love. And she's like, you're ready to have plants. Take this clipping. And I'm like, I don't know. But she was right. Like, it started with this little clipping, like this sad little leaf with 3 roots. It has a bunch of roots now, but in a jar of water. And now I have like 7 plants around my house. I have a routine about it. Like, only one has died, but I think it was given to me to die. I didn't kill it. So I feel like I'm meeting a whole new part of myself, and that's been a lot of fun. Nice. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, thank you all. Crows are being used. One of my students sent me a video and we watched it in class. Crows are being used in, I'm probably getting it wrong, but I want to say Denmark, as trash collectors. And they've set up this whole system where if they bring a piece of trash and put it in a specific spot, then they get a food pellet, right? And because people smoke a lot, and so there's lots of cigarettes and things, but it's much cleaner now than it has been, and they are looking to expand the program to other types of trash. I'm like, that is so brilliant. It's awesome, because our animals are so smart. Like, we could do so much more. And so I loved hearing your story. I'm Team Autism for the win, all the way. Huge part of my bio. And I love, and I think this happens so much in genre fiction, where we are reading something and it's like, that person has a touch of autism. Because, you know, we can connect with these different characters, different people, and the way that their brain works. I'm reading one right now that is just, it's so cool because of the way that the person experiences the world. And they don't say anything about neurodivergence or anything, but then also the way another character truly sees that person, and they have a different way of seeing the world that also is probably a bit neurodivergent as well. So I love the spectrum. It's super cool right now to have autistic characters and autistic content. It's like the after school special of the week that has picked up. But it's also really great when shows get it right and they do it in a way that is deeper and that shows lots of variance. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. How did you all get started on your paths? I mean, NASA? Like, when you were a kid, did you think, I'm going to work for NASA? I mean, you may have, which is awesome. But did you?
I'm sorry, my story is very boring. I prefer people who, like, I did this and then this and then I fell into it. That's way more interesting. I know a lot of you guys are writers and readers here. Personally, I liked a bunch of things when I was a little kid. I liked to dig up my grandmother's backyard, looking for old toys my mom played with. I thought, maybe I'll be an archaeologist. And I loved arguing with my brother, maybe I should be a lawyer. But the one theme through it all, my mom loved Star Trek and Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica. She got me and my brother interested in science fiction when I was little. And so by the time I was in high school and everyone was doing the what are you going to be thing, what are you going to major in college, I wanted something to do with space, whatever that was, and then I took engineering as a path to get there. Nice. And it was only years later that my mom told me that when I told her I wanted to work for NASA, she was like, oh my God, like, how am I going to explain to this kid? Like, maybe when you're 40, it's your, like, 6th job. And when I landed an internship as an undergrad at NASA Langley, she was like, you have got to be kidding. But she was just my cheerleader the whole way and didn't tell me about her doubts till later, thank goodness. Yeah. So, yeah, just the dominoes kind of fell down that way for me.
That's pretty cool. Thank you. Anybody else?
Well, it's being handed back to me, so sure. So I was also a kid who just always, I loved a little bit of everything, and I never, growing up, my grandpa would say, like, her problem is going to be she's not going to know what to choose. Like, she's going to want to do everything. And it's true. And I still do want to do everything. I wish there was more time or, like, a bunch of clones of me that we could just upload and find out what we learned. But anyway, that's creepy, so don't do, anyway, maybe not. All the sci-fi authors in here are just cringing as I say that. So, for me, though, I knew I wanted to write. Like, I've always loved writing, and I've always been the kid who was like writing stories and drawing pictures instead of doing anything else I should have been doing. And I never knew that there would be a way to make that happen, because I believed that to be a writer, you have to get really lucky. And in some ways you do, yes. But I just, I didn't know what I was going to do. I went to college. I got a BA in English and history. Changed my major like 50 times along the road, but I came out with that. And then I went into teaching, which I loved, but I started to play tabletop role-playing games and go to conventions. And I sat next to a gentleman one day who told me, oh, you're a writer? Like, have you ever thought about writing for tabletop role-playing games? And I was like, is that really a thing? Like, they really pay people for this? They do. And the person I was sitting next to was Owen Casey Stevens, who at the time worked for Paizo and is one of like the role-playing game, like tabletop luminaries, right, of third-party publishing and indie games. And he just happened to sit down next to this person at a convention who was into gaming and say, hey, this is a thing you can actually do. And I pursued it, and I worked on my portfolio, and years later, here I am. I work at Paizo as a creative director of a line now, and I've written a bunch of stuff. So you can do it too, everybody. Woohoo!
Anybody else want to say your past?
Well, the first thing I want to say is the reason I paused when you asked us about other biofacts was because my brain said, Kat, don't talk about your plants. No one wants to hear about your monstera. Don't talk about your plants. But I, too, began that this year, and it has been so, so good for me, especially because I live in Maine where the winters are grim. So having all that green in that. But anyway, as far as how I got started on my path, I mean, there's so many ways to talk about that, right? Like I'm from here. I was born at UW Hospital. My dad dropped me off here. And in the car, he was talking about the first movie he ever took me to when I was an infant was Alien. The choices. But so is that what started me on my path? Or was it just that I was an extraordinarily lonely child? And it turns out if you make people up in your head, they can't leave you. I'm pretty sure that was a big part of it. And I inhaled from like the earliest time I could possibly remember fantasy and science fiction, fairy tales especially. And I remember I was 5 years old and I read The Never-Ending Story, the book. And no one believed that I did because I was 5. That's ridiculous. And so like at my parents' dinner party, they like peppered me with questions about the book to make me prove that I read it. And I am also an extraordinarily stubborn and obstinate person. So it was just like, F you. I didn't know that word, but like, F you. I'm going to show you how much I read this book, because I did. But like from The Never-Ending Story, like that was, I think, really the first time I had the notion in my mind that I wanted to make other people feel the way I felt when I read that book, because it is a magic spell, and like I wanted to be that kind of magician. That's what I wanted. My first novel came out when I was 24. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I suspect several people in this room do or have done NaNoWriMo. And I actually started with that National Novel Writing Month. It's in the month of November. It's 50,000 words. That's the challenge, right? 50,000 words in the month of November. I did it the second year it existed, only I didn't actually do it because I knew that in November I was going to have to move across the country. So it was October, and I was 22 and didn't know I couldn't do things yet. So I was just full of piss and vinegar. So I was like, 30 days, whatever, I'll do it in 10. So by myself, without the support of the community, I wrote my first novel in 10 days, and that was The Labyrinth that came out a couple of years later. Now, should it have come out? I don't know, man. That was the first like serious piece of fiction I ever wrote, and I had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. But if you line up all my books in chronological order, you can see me like awkwardly grow up and figure out how to write a novel. So that was how it all started for me. Yeah. Weird fact, Tobias Buckell and I wrote our first novels in the same Starbucks in Rhode Island. Different times, but like we wrote our books in the same Starbucks. I want to send them a plaque.
Yeah, sorry I interrupted there, but NaNoWriMo, I just saw online maybe last week or a week or so ago, and they are no longer able to sustain, so they are ending. Yeah, there won't be any more.
I'm a little shattered, actually. That is very upsetting.
Yeah, I know for a lot of us writers, you know.
It was mostly due to the AI solution.
Oh. Okay. Well,
Yeah, it's complicated.
We're gonna move on from that. That makes a lot of sense. Ugh, that's yucky.
My story's really easy. I blame my parents for everything. I couldn't stop drawing as a small child, and yet for many, many years I fought against the notion of becoming an artist. My parents were both illustrators, natural history illustrators, and they did a lot of field guide work and scientific illustration. And I loved that, and I watched them as they worked and sort of picked up everything by osmosis, but never really had any formal training from them. So for the longest time, what I wanted to be was either a paleontologist or an archaeologist. Those were my two youthful passions. But then reality set in, and while my grades were good, my art was even better. And I suddenly set my sights on doing paperback covers. And this was because my dad bought me my first science fiction books, among them the John Carter series and Burroughs and all that. And to a 10-year-old mind, that was just more than I could sustain, really. My room was filled with paperbacks, and I just read and read and read and read. One thing led to another. I started to, when I was at Cooper Union, I was there for 2 years, and I started to get editorial work in college. So I was sort of set on my path, and then after that, I had the idea of sort of blending what my folks did, which was a field guide, with all the reading and all the characters that I had assembled in my mind as worthy of depicting in a field guide sort of setting.
Yeah.
And so when I was 20, Barlowe's guide came out, and it took me under a year, actually, to do that. The 50 paintings and the 50 smaller pieces and all the sketchbook stuff in the back of the guide. And that lasted in print for a good period of time. Probably sold 500,000 copies when the day was over. But it is all my parents' fault. You know?
I guess I have to answer the question. I was thinking about that. So like a lot of people like, how'd you get here? And they have this story from their childhood that set them on their path. And for me, it's kind of opposite. I don't know if anybody else is in here. My hell yes is very active. It's like you say something like, Isis, do you want to do it? I'm like, yes! like, do I really want to do that? I don't know, but we're on this course now. And I think just stuff has come up. So had you asked me 10 years ago, do you want to open a bookstore? I'm like, I don't know. That's not my path. But something happened. Somebody was like, do you want to read Little Brood with me? And I'm like, yes, that sounds great. And we read it, and they talked about all these authors. And I'm like, I don't know these authors. We should start a platform that introduces Black women in science fiction to people. And my brain was like, yes. And that's my brain. And so somebody was like, do you want to come to Norwescon? And I was like, yes. So ask me a question this weekend, and the answer, I mean, you can guess what the answer will be. It'll be yes.
It's so funny. I'm thinking all the different ways I could tell this story, right? And that's kind of my job. I'm a senior developer at Paizo, but what does that mean? I'm a storyteller, and I'm also a former teacher. And what was my job as a teacher? It's kind of like my job now, which is actually not to tell stories. That's not how I saw my job, but to help people understand narratives and understand stories. And so there's so many ways I could talk about how I started as a teacher, but I was already playing role-playing games, and I was writing for Paizo and doing all these things. There's so many ways that I could tell that story that I'm struggling to find a way to tell the story. But if you think about all the people, and I think about the people I know who work on role-playing games, like Jenny here, who's also a former teacher, and a lot of freelancers I know who were in teaching, And I think there's a lot of overlap in an industry where you have people sitting around a table telling a story together, or a classroom where you have people trying to grapple with things like U.S. history or world history, or I was a social studies teacher, English teacher, right? Storytelling is just so fascinating, and there's so many ways that I could tell a sad story about how I became a game designer. I could tell a motivational story about how I became a game designer. I could tell a story and ask all of you to interpret it and tell me like what your interpretation of the text is, right, and how you think I became a game designer. And you take from that what you will. I don't know if I have a conclusion that I want to tell you, but yeah.
All right. So I was walking here to the grand ballroom, and I passed by registration, and I saw the vending machine, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's a Sister Sci-Fi vending machine. So cool. It's so, I hadn't seen one in person. How did that whole thing come about?
You know, I said hell yes. No, so Sister Sci-Fi is not a brick and mortar, so you're not going to go see a Sister Sci-Fi store. And so it really started up. I was popping up at places where I thought like people would be excited to buy science fiction by Black and Indigenous people. So one of the first ones was the Bushwick Book Club did Parable of the Sower. And I was like, can I come? Can I sell books? And they're like, yes, random person, you can come sell books. And then I was like, you know what Sister Sci-Fi needs to grow is like this box that locks and allows for transactions, and people can come and buy the books whenever they want to, and I don't have to be there. And I sat and I'm like, that's called a vending machine. That's not a new invention. Those exist. And so I think I had that idea like 6 months into doing Sister Sci-Fi, but then it took a while to like see if there's see if people even want to like buy books from like online from somebody who's not some other online bookseller, and find a community. And so then I launched the first one 2 years ago now. Here in Seattle, there's one in Oakland, and yeah, so it was excitement around it, and that was more like an answer to a solution, like a question, like a problem that I was having, and people were like, "So where's the brick and mortar?" I'm like, "It's this vending machine. Like that's the brick and mortar. Have fun with it." So that's how that happened.
Yeah. So I had asked Jenny and Mike. Sorry, I was thinking Mark. I was seeing Mark in my head, but I knew that was wrong. If they had constraints on the second edition of the game, or if they had a lot of freedom to build what they wanted it to look like. And I was really interested in that answer. Can you tell us a little bit, tell the audience a little bit?
Oh, sure. So for those of you not familiar, Starfinder 2nd Edition is coming out this year, actually in August. Yay! And it is going to be fully compatible with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So if you know how to play that, you can play both. But we did, we were able to have a lot of freedom. We obviously wanted to preserve the original setting because Starfinder 1st Edition already had a world, a galaxy that had been created. And we, Mike and I, are people who have also written for it even before we were on the team. We began as freelance contributors. So this is something we're all pretty invested in. And we know that the people playing the game are invested too. And so there were a lot of conversations our team had about, we get to introduce all this cool new stuff, but instead of just rewriting, we wanted to build. So we wanted to kind of explain why things changed. One example is we have a planet, it's Polonus is the name of this planet. It's located in a system called Gavaniska, which is ruled by the Veskarium. This is an imperial regime of Vesk. They are, well, it's not all Vesk, but the main species in this is, they're Vesk. They're reptilian, big, powerful lizard type people. And the Veskarium is an empire that has conquered multiple worlds, and they are occupying these worlds in their system. And one world in particular, Polonus, which they had called Vesk 6, but that's not the correct name, had been rebelling against this occupation for many, many decades. And this is like a thing that had been going on, but in first edition, it's just kind of in the background and it's assumed, it's like, oh, we just call it like Vesk 6, but they call it Polonus. But in the second edition, we really wanted that planet to achieve independence from this regime and to show how that changed, like on the galactic stage. And so we showed that happening on screen, on screen, so to speak, in the first edition adventures, letting players get invested in that storyline. And now we've explained that this is an event that just happened. They declared independence. Like this other thing happened, like a war happened with the Veskarium, and they saw their moment that they could just finally do it. And now they are, a free actor. They've actually allied with another force, the Pact Worlds. It's just an alliance for mutual protection. So they're the first Pact World that isn't in this the Pact World system to have joined. So that's just an example of ways that we really do have a lot of creative control, but we are trying to preserve things that we know are, just important parts of our setting while evolving them. Mike, do you have anything you want to add there?
You and I both have kind of backgrounds in like adventure design, and I think that really shows in our book that's coming out first, even before like the rules of the system are out. The Galaxy Guide is coming out, and the way that you kind of thought to structure this was from like a storytelling perspective, because what do we make? We make a game for people to sit around and tell stories. So this book isn't like a encyclopedic tome about the galaxy of Starfinder. It's organized by sort of theme: horror adventures, fantasy adventures, cyber tech adventures, and we think that kind of makes it approachable for our audience, which is people who want to tell stories together. What kind of story do you want to tell? And it's organized in that way. Another thing that we have a lot of control over creatively is not what we decide to write, but who we decide works on the book. So like we hire freelancers, and I hired a ridiculous number of freelancers for like our book of aliens, where my boss and his boss were like, "Why are you doing this, Mike?" And I'm like, because I want lots of people contributing to this, because I want new voices writing for this game. I don't want to write 200 pages of creatures. I don't want 10 people to write 200 pages of creatures. I want 60 people to write 200 pages of creatures. And was that difficult? Yes, but I wanted it anyway. And so we kind of control that as well, I suppose. But yeah.
But yeah, ultimately it's also a team process, and we don't have all of our team here today. Unfortunately, they're with us in spirit. Dustin Knight and Jessica Catalan are super awesome. But yeah, that's kind of it, is that we just get to take Starfinder First Edition into its future, and we're very excited to show that to everybody.
Go for it, yeah.
Hopefully this is not stirring trouble. How do y'all work together? Y'all are so different.
How do we work together?
Yeah, I mean, like, how is the process? Not like, how is it possible? Like, what is the process like?
Let me think about that. just like what our process is, or on the team? Yeah, so okay. So it really depends. Like typically, if we're saying, all right, we need there to be a book, someone like the publisher from on high, Eric Mona will be like, you need to have a book. Like, team, make me a book. And we'll be like, okay. And so we'll brainstorm a book. And it's typically our whole team will be, we are remote, so we're together on Zoom in the digital lands, where we have many glitch gremlins that cause us trouble, but it's okay. And we brainstorm together, we chat, and then we'll come up with our idea, someone will sit down and write an outline, and then we workshop that like together. Everyone kind of does iterative passes. We'll select authors, and then we'll send the authors an assignment and kind of do a milestone check-in with them. So they'll write something for us, they'll pitch it, we'll say, oh, okay, this is great, but can you change this, or here's a suggestion, what about this? And then they will send us back their finished product, and we then edit or develop it, rather, as we call it.
We both speak the common language of lots of coffee.
Yeah, coffee is the official drink of the Starfinder team.
Yes. No, I don't know, how do we work together? We all have our own strengths, I think, and I think one thing our team does well is that we None of us are too precious about our creations, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we're very willing to just lay it out in front of someone, whatever messy form it's in, and get that feedback. And I think probably for you and I, at least, not the rest of our team, but being teachers previously has a lot to do with our willingness to just like, it isn't ready, but I'm going to get up and we're going to do it anyway, right? And let's go. And yeah.
All right. Thank you for asking the question. Yeah, thank you. Tracy, what's the biggest misconception that you always have to explain to people about working at NASA?
Ooh, that's a good one. Here. What can I say without getting myself into trouble with my colleagues? I'll pick one. I think people believe that at NASA we know everything and we never make mistakes, and that if you do make a mistake, you are instantly fired. and I think that number one, the kinds of things we do, I work on robotic spacecraft that explore our solar system, they are so amazingly complex, and we do different tailored missions for the things that are pushing the frontiers of science. We're going places we've not been before, Star Trek, and we are in harsh environments like the radiation environment around Jupiter that is just ridiculous. And so we do our best, we do all our research, we do all the analysis, we build things to be as robust as possible. But because they're so complicated, something's always going to go a little bit wrong here and there and everywhere, which is one of the things that's exciting for systems engineers like me, because our job is to figure out, why isn't that working? What can we do about it in order to make it work? Like, that's the thing that we find like fun and engaging and interesting. And so people think that we never mess up. We make errors all the time. And then when we make those mistakes, those are the places where you learn a tremendous amount, more than you could have trying to do it right the first time. Right. And so if someone makes an error, not just because like a genuine error, I thought this would work and it didn't. We value those people because we know you're going to learn from that and not make that mistake again. You'll make some other mistake, but it'll strengthen your work as you go. Yeah. So I think that's a pretty big one. And I think people also think that if you work at NASA, that means you were perfect from the time you were 2, and that math was always your friend and all of the things. But for me, personally, going through college was, I mean, I'm not going to lie, some of it was easy, but some of it was very hard. Like, I got a D in Chemistry 101 freshman year, y'all. Yikes! Had to take that again, got an A the second time, yay. And so sometimes you need to see things a couple of times, and you've heard the cliche, it's not how many times you fall, it's how many times you get up and keep going. And so I think about NASA as being a place where people have a lot of grit, where there's a lot of perseverance. That's why we have a rover named that. And so it's just about trying and failing and then keeping going until you succeed. So,
yeah, thank you. Wayne, why hell?
Is this a therapy session?
I mean, it's free.
No, it's a great question, and there are kind of 2 answers to it. One is I was inspired by Paradise Lost, so that's the sort of underpinning of it. Is there such a thing as an overpinning? The overpinning is that because hell is a concept that goes across the board in our world. I mean, not every culture has its own hell, but close. Mm-hmm. Demons, all of those things exist in historical and cultural contexts. I've tried with mine to not format anything in Hollywood terms in a traditional vein. I've tried to make it a world unto itself, and that's what's the most interesting aspect of it to me. It's world building. So when I wrote the 2 novels, that was about character, but it was also about the world. Mm-hmm. Much like, well, not in any level as great as this, but Blade Runner, when you hear interviews with Ridley Scott, he says the world is a character. Mm-hmm. I want that to be the same in hell. Mm-hmm. So right now I'm working on a book that's taking far too long called The Wildlife of Hell, which creates the fauna and sometimes flora, but not very much, the fauna in its own setting as if hell existed as a world before the demons fell, with its own indigenous people who were put upon by the demons. And so the macro-faunal thing is very important to me. Bottom line is, this is the best way for me to be as creative as I possibly can be. It's world building on, for me, a grand scale. Darwin 4 for Expedition had its own integrity and was trying to stimulate readers into just thinking that there could be a fully fledged world out there other than our own. But it was somewhat grounded in terrestrial ideas. This, the bounds are limitless, and so I can play with a degree of mysticism, with almost metaphysical characteristics in creatures. The characters in this book that I'm working on are somewhat secondary. They're narrating the situations that they get into vis-a-vis the creatures. But I feel like I could spend 3 lifetimes putting all of this together. There's just so much, and each time I create another character, it sort of begs the question of 2 more characters. And part of the problem I'm having right now is that as a professional, you look at a deadline in your contract and you say, okay, there it is. You know, it's not moving, it's not going further ahead. Every time I write something, it catalyzes another image, which means I have to put aside the writing and do the image. Then I get back to the writing and it's a snake with its tail in its mouth. So anyway, it's just very creative for me. It's very stimulating. I feel like it's territory that hasn't really been explored in the fullest. If you look historically, it's almost always about the characters in hell. It's not about the world itself. And so this is world building on a grand scale.
Yeah, nice. One of my students, they are writing a story that is set in the circles of hell, and they have, they hate soup. They were, did daycare with their grandparent who always gave them soup for lunch. So one of the circles of hell is a soup circle. And everyone has to eat soup for every meal. And I just thought that was so
That's so sad.
hysterical. Yeah,
It really
it's just
is.
really fun. And that takes the place of the gluttony or the gluttonous, circle. And it's really
Well,
interesting.
just as an aside, vis-a-vis Dante, Dante was great. I read him in college. I thought he was fantastic. But this is so much my world. That, it kicked off with Milton mostly in a character setting. Milton touches on the look of hell, but this is me.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it more fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Kat, you said that you've written a number of books and you've found your way into your style, and that's not exactly what you said, but what, if you had to identify the book where you're like, this is me, like I've really hit my stride in this book, which of your books would you say was that one?
Like the first one where I felt like I kind of
Yeah.
had. I mean, the thing is, when you're writing a book, you never feel like you have a handle on how to write a book. So, like, I've literally, book 49 came out last year, and the whole time was like, maybe I'm just not good at this anymore. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing. I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing at all times. But I think probably Deathless was the first one where I would volunteer that I think it's pretty good, instead of like, oh, well, I did my best. But I am proud of all of my books. And as far as the style goes, though I care deeply about language, I care about it so much. I'm a classicist by training, Greek and Latin. And I want everything. I want the language to matter. Like when I first started out, I had this whole notion that, like, because I was a poet at first, that every word in a novel could matter the way it matters in a poem. Now, I've grown up, and that's exhausting. But not for readers, not for writers. Well, it is exhausting for a writer too. But I think that finding my way was finding a balance between that kind of incredible intensity and, like, functionally telling a story. But Deathless is a traditional Russian fairy tale, but it's retold during the siege of Leningrad. in World War II. And it is probably the most depressing thing I've ever written, and probably the funniest until space opera. Slavic humor is grim and hilarious. But as you mentioned, like finding my style, I am also neurodivergent. I am team ADHD. The Orphan's Tales, which was my first major book, I should have just been able to hand in and receive a prescription. It should have been diagnostic of what was going on with me. It just is an ADHD book. But I try really hard to do something different every time. It nearly kills me to write a series, because doing the same thing over and over is very, very difficult for me. And so part of my style is being able to hop from style to style. My first short story collection was called Ventriloquism, and in many ways I feel like that's part of what I do. I throw my voice. And in doing